All right, well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Greg Clay, the host of Purpose-Driven Pivot, and we are excited to have y'all back for the first episode of the 2021 year. We're off to an exciting start, a lot to catch up to as the new year has started, and we're picking up right where we left off with amazing interviews with amazing folks that are doing some phenomenal things out in the community and have made excellent pivots on their journey. We're looking to continue this series this year all the way through the month of June. As folks have been following, this is a series that we started in June and we're running 2020, running it through the June 2021. And we're interviewing folks like my guest today to learn how they pivoted on this journey of life to really have folks learn and pull information from. And not only that, inspire us along the way. I have a very special guest with me this afternoon, Ruthy. Hey, Ruthy, how you doing?
Hi, Greg. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Ruthy, you look great. We were talking during the pre-interview conversation. I was like, wow, Ruthy, you giving it to him today. I love it. You look great.
Thank you.
And so thank you so much for joining me on this phenomenal conversation series. And so you learn, yeah, what were you saying, Ruthy?
I'll just say my pleasure. My
Oh,
pleasure.
yeah. And so we'll learn a lot about her path as the president of the Urban League Guild here in the Atlanta area. But Ruthy and I have known each other for quite some time. Ruthy, I was trying to put the math on how long we've known each other. And it may be 13, 14, maybe 15 years.
I think so. We're approaching about that time. Almost 20, but not quite there. Yes.
Yeah, almost 20, but not quite there. And so, I mean, we met through an organization called the National Forum for Black Public Administrators. We both are practitioners in the public space. And I actually met Ruthy through the organization when I was kind of learning about public administration as a grad school student. And we've just been phenomenal friends since then. She knows my wife, Shani, and they're good friends. And so Ruthy is really a member of our extended family, in addition to being this phenomenal leader that has had this great journey. And so Ruthy, let's start the conversation with just getting to know more about yourself, you know, where you're from, things that kind of inspire you, and then we'll kind of take a deep dive into your career as someone in the civic space and tell people a little bit more about, you know, how you pivoted on your journey. So start anywhere that you like.
Sure. So I'm a native New Yorker. As you know, time will tell when we talk and converse, that accent will eventually come out at some point. But I have been in Atlanta approaching about 23 years now. So you can say that I'm an Atlantan, you know, half peach, half apple.
We'll have you. We'll have you. No apple.
No apple. Well, you know, us apples, we don't deny. We'll never deny the apple. As you know, New Yorkers are super arrogant about where we're from. So that part about me, I'll never, ever deny. So I'm going to always, you know, give it half and half. But it's a pleasure to have been here in Atlanta. I've really spent the formative of my adult years here. Finished my education in New York City and then came down with my family. And shortly thereafter, a couple of years into my matriculation into the city, I kind of had to find myself and decide, you know, what was I going to do with my life as a young person, just starting off my career in healthcare. But I felt like there was a bigger purpose for me. And that's how you and I met, just by a simple Google search. You know, I told you all the story. I wanted to get into public administration, try to understand what it meant to be a servant, not only in a volunteer space, but how can I meld that into my work and career? And so when you and I met several years ago, the organization really just kind of spearheaded our leadership. It kind of really formed our civic leadership here in Atlanta. It formed our networks. I made lifelong friends through the organization. But I still continue to work in the private sector for many years. And so I started off in healthcare claim services and then worked my way up into healthcare IT and did that for quite some time. And due to a layoff in that field, then a door opened up for me to come into the government and municipal space. And so that's where I find myself now, working for the city of South Fulton, again, under the tutelage of Catherine Rao, who is now Dr. Catherine Rao. first city council for the District 1, City of South Fulton, and also former president of the National Forum for Black Public Administrator Atlanta
Mhm.
chapter.
Yeah,
The
and
best
shout out,
chapter.
yeah, the best chapter. Shout out to Dr. Rose. She's been doing phenomenal lean in work, and when she ran for city council down in the city of South Fulton, as they got the framework together, she's been off to an exciting start with the helps of folks like yourself in making sure that the constituents not just chart this path for service delivery, but the narrative that y'all are building in the city of South Fulton has been a phenomenal one for not just the Atlanta region, but for the country. When you look at how well folks are doing in the median income of families, which is about, I think, like $78,000, which is unheard of. And so the resources and the request for services and just the opportunity is really, really there. So you see that on a day-to-day basis. And
For
so
sure.
when it comes to the foundation that you laid in healthcare services, somewhat being on the fringe, but also engaged in public administration, what were some of the early things that that you were attracted to that made you continue down that path? Was it just this passion for politics? Was it just passion for service in a space and how you navigated that through the private sector? Or what kept you at that table for so long?
So let's take it back. I think it goes back to my childhood, right? Um, Growing up, I grew up in a fairly, diverse community in New York City. Also grew up in the church. And so my involvement with social activities and civil activities was really modeled by my parents. Just kind of seeing how they moved around in the city and the influence that they had growing up. Just before we left New York, my parents and a couple of other families founded a church, and so seeing all that in place and in action, when I went off to college, it was just a natural transition for me to be an activist, unbeknownst to me that even that's what I was doing. And so
Mm,
I'll share with you all, I attended State University of New York at New Paltz, upstate. And there was a moment where, and it's a PWI, so, there's a handful of students of color there. There was a moment where there was some sort of a discrimination issue with Black professors and not extending their contract. And as you all know, when you're in that environment, those professors are like your family members.
yeah.
They're like the extension to not only your, professor, they're teachers, but they're like aunts and uncles, and they kind of reel you in and they hold on to you until you make sure you graduate.
They're really helping to guide you through that process that has a lot of ambiguity to it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so when we heard that their contracts were being compromised, I was part of the Black Student Union at the time, and we staged a sit-in. Didn't tell my parents. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what was happening. All I knew is that we had to stand up, and the charge was for us to block the student union building, the main building on campus. And I still remember this to the day. And I'm thinking to myself, what was in my mind when I did this? Why did I do this? Did I not think I was going to get arrested? Was I going to get kicked out of school? It's just so many things that go through your mind.
Yeah,
But at the time, you just knew in your heart it was the right thing to do,
yeah,
and that you wanted to help others. Begin because when you see the model, you only can do what you see, and it will just continue to grow and fester inside of you. And so I found myself out in the cold upstate New York City outside, holding hands with other classmates
yeah,
and blocking the student union building, and making a statement that, we have a voice, we pay tuition,
yeah,
we support this university, but we also want these certain professors for their contracts to be extended. We didn't want them to lose their jobs. They were an extension of us. And that's kind of where all that began for me. Just that one pivotal moment, and along with other service activities I'd done locally at home in terms of serving the homeless and attending soup kitchens with my parents and such. Again, at the time as a youth, I didn't understand it. And, I'm being very transparent. I was upset. I wanted to stay at home and watch TV and cartoons.
like
And
all
like,
of
why
us,
do I have to do this?
yeah,
Right?
yeah,
But then you realize as you become an adult and now you're out of your parents' home and you're trying to find your way and you're trying to find your purpose, you find that you go right back to those things that were instilled in you. And so while I was moving through the space of private sector and on working on a back end of healthcare, not actually a clinician, but working on a technical side, so still helping providers and patients with the safety of their care, because all that is important in terms of processing claims and in terms of education when it came to training doctors and nurses on how to use the electronic medical system. That was
Yeah.
a whole movement that I was part of under the Obama administration when that became law, as you all remember. So we moved from paper to electronic medical records, and that was a big endeavor. I was part of that movement for the WellStar system when
Yeah.
it was only 4 hospitals at the time. I
Yeah.
believe now WellStar is like 16 hospitals and such, but at the time it was about 4 hospitals.
Mhm.
And so still in that space, I found that what can I be doing with my personal time, with my free time? How can I help others? How can I make a difference? I know I can't save the world, but if I can just touch one person,
Yeah.
I would have felt like I would have done something. And so that's how, again, it led me to public administration, where I found that in that practice, you can do things to help others policy wise
Mhm.
and with legislatively. And so then that's where my fuel became, and while studying in grad school, being an active participant and an active citizen. You know, I didn't understand at the time how important it was to attend town hall meetings.
Mhm.
And I found myself in my neighborhood being one of the few people of color. You know, I'm a resident of Cobb. I've been in Cobb for over 20 years. And so when I moved,
A lot going on in Cobb County. I got, new chair, just
we're
keep doing everything.
doing really, really well. I mean, Cobb is not even purple anymore. I think we're like totally all the way blue.
Yeah.
And I didn't think I would live to see today. I didn't even think that that would happen in my generation or in my time. But
Sure,
again, all
sure.
of our efforts really pushed through. And so today we stand on having the first Black Cobb County sheriff. We have the first Black Cobb County chairwoman, the first Black Cobb County city clerk that I just
Mm.
found out just the other day. So we're making
Okay.
a lot of strides. And so on a civic end, now my mission is to just to empower folks that, you know, your vote does count. You do have a voice. Hold your elected officials accountable. I mean, you know, we can go all the way down that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
I campaigned for you, Greg. You remember,
Yeah,
lost my
yeah.
voice, yelling like, go Clay, go
Listen,
Clay.
indeed, indeed. And we share, so two things immediately come to mind. We share the same experience back in my college days. Was my first experience with a sit-in. It was during the presidential election when down in Florida, there was this big contention around, back in like 2000, the presidential then, the, concern around ballots that were casted. And when we were in Tallahassee, Andrew Gillum, a lot of the time when they talked about him being a student leader at FAMU, we were freshmen and we found ourselves at the Capitol, similar to you, not really knowing what was going on, but we were doing a sit-in protesting, politics and what was happening. It made me think about just even our generation, us sharing that same type of experience, me in Florida, you in New York, and how sometimes folks in our generation don't think about, when we think about sit-ins and, these forms of protest that we saw 50, 60, or 70 years ago, how we still have those similar experiences, in that particular form of protest. I felt that was, just realizing that through our conversation that, wow, we both had those same type of experiences being in two different places. The other piece was, we talk about this a lot with Empower, which is a new journey that I'm on through the app Empower, EMPOWRD. When it comes to civic engagement, this parallel around, voting and then folks getting involved in the civic process. My question now is, with you being this practitioner in the space and helping the folks in the city of South Fulton, seeing a lot of this energy that's happening where you live in Cobb County, do you find yourself being able to turn it off, right? This interest to stay engaged and stay plugged in? Like, do you leave South Fulton, come back home, and then, you're going full throttle with community stuff in Cobb County as well?
So yeah, you're right. It's not the easiest thing to turn off because
Yeah,
you come from the workspace and then again with your personal time you just feel endeavored to
yeah,
help and support and to be a part of that, right?
yeah,
And so when these changes happened in Cobb, I felt a bit of entitlement a little bit because I was part of that. I
yeah.
did help to campaign a couple of people, sent out postcards, called, phone bank, text messaging, all of that. So you feel that that's a part of you. And again, it's owning your citizenship owning your space, right? And so for me, you have to find a way to turn it off and kind of, do the whole self-care, but it's
Yeah.
ongoing for us. When that's what keeps you up at night and you're trying to figure out, well, what can I do to make a change, or how can I help? Whose campaign can I assist? Who do I support? Who do I want to help get elected? It's
Yeah.
just an ongoing endeavor.
Mhm.
And so I feel like, I guess I'm blessed at work where I get paid to do that and work and serve and advocate on behalf of constituents. But then I
Mhm.
can also use that knowledge and translate that over into my volunteer time as well, and vice
Sure.
versa, right? Even on the volunteer end, when I campaign, I can bring that over because I work for an elected official. I
Sure.
work for city council. So it's kind of like it's mutually exclusive
Mhm.
and beneficial.
What's your message like? And then I want to kind of get into the space of the guild, because through the guild, you do a lot. As a president of the Urban League of Greater Atlanta Guild, which you can talk more about. But before fully transitioning into that space, as someone that has had this very, very thorough experience around civic engagement, knowing the political environment now in Georgia, and particularly even kind of Cobb County in the Metro Atlanta area, what's your message to folks that say, "Whew, now voting is done, we can kind of take a break"? What's your message to even our peers around, why it's important for them to stay plugged in and engaged, and then talk a little bit maybe about, some of your plans for the future for the guild and helping to do that, execute that.
So it's okay to take a break. We had a monumental win. We worked really, really hard through Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's Eve. So through 3 major holidays ending the year through COVID, we've worked really, really hard, right? We sacrificed time with our family and friends to phone bank. Some of us actually canvassed on foot, socially, acceptable and distance. I would say at this point, with the wins that we've gotten, have a seat. It is okay. Take care of yourself,
Yeah.
self-care. I mean, I would be remiss if I didn't say that. And I'm also speaking and preaching to myself
Yeah.
as well, right?
Mm.
So if I can say it to you all, I'm also saying it to myself as well. Like, it's okay. Take a breather. Do what makes you happy. If it's a piece of chocolate cake, eat that and eat it really well. Bowl of ice cream, whatever it is. Binge watch your Netflix. But then we have to hit the ground running, right? We've got to get back up. And get back up, what does that look like? Is now holding your elected officials accountable. Whether your person won or not, they still work for you.
Mhm.
And so the thing that I've heard for so long and for so many years, talking to elected officials, many of them say to me over and over again, Ruthy, we don't hear from our constituents.
Mhm.
So while I'm out here at the Capitol, at the state, making a decision and writing a bill or legislation, they're still coming back to us that campaign for them and that volunteer. We don't hear from our folks.
Yeah.
They're not emailing. I mean, the Capitol is the people's house. It is not some Illuminati. It's not a private place. It is open to the public. So
Mhm.
you can either walk in or schedule an appointment to meet with your elected official if you
Mhm.
so choose.
Mhm.
Now, again, with COVID, things have changed. So I'm sure that that process has changed greatly or maybe limited, but you can use the telephone or social media or an email. Even if you just say, hello, I live on X, Y, and Z street. I'm your constituent. I'm willing to work with you. Again, whether they are on your side or not, but just
Mhm.
making yourself known and at least extending an olive branch or a hand to say to this elected official that you are there, you're willing to work with them, or even learn about what are their points, what are they trying to do for the community, and how does that meld with your needs and the
Mhm.
community's needs.
Good.
So
That's
that's
awesome.
what I would employ people to do at this point, is just get to know your elected officials, right? Because we keep saying that we don't have a voice and all this voter suppression, and all of that is very real in some cases.
Mhm.
But let's talk about to the reality that these are real life people that have been voted and elected and put into place, that they want to hear from their constituents. Sometimes they also need guidance. Many times they're just operating on information from PACs, political action committees, or from other individuals. But if they don't hear from
Ruthie,
you,
it
yeah.
seems like, such an intimidating thing to reach out to elected officials. I know that, because we've been working in the space for quite some time, we'll walk up and talk up to anybody. right? But it can be so intimidating because of so much that goes into it. I've tried to throughout my career and working and serving say, hey, this is the simple part, and these are the more complex things because it gets really, really complex. But within that complexity, it gets really, really intimidating sometimes. What is your how are your conversations with folks about breaking down some of those barriers to say, hey, such and such, your elected official really wants to hear from you? I mean, I bet you see it all the time.
So let's go back to the basics. I was once that person, right? I didn't just jump into politics and felt comfortable like you and I, again, I was scared too. I didn't know what I was doing or what I was saying or what was happening. But I'll take it back to the Urban League. This organization, when I joined as a young professional, it kind of opened up the door and gave us the ground rules. So if you remember when we used to have the Day at the Capitol,
Mm-hmm.
right? I would attend those. And that was always an event that I looked forward to because it was a day where we came together as a group of peers and we got to visit with a particular elected official that chose to host us. And
Yeah.
they actually walked us through the legislative process. And so that's a very non-intimidating way to join through an organization. I also was a member of Young Democrats of Atlanta. I was a member of Young Democrats of Cobb County. So joining those organizations and networking with others and speaking to other people, assisting with campaigns and volunteering help break down foundation factors. So that's an excellent question that you bring up. But the way to break that down is, again, same way the way I saw, National Forum for Black Public Administrators. I wanted to be around like-minded people. Because again, this work is not solo. You don't do this alone. And so you want to surround yourself around people that if you're the smartest person in the room, as they always say, you're in the wrong room, right? You always want to be around folks that know more than you do so that you can learn and take back to your network.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, it was joining all those political organizations. I just went in and then joined committees. And that's how I was able to learn how to break down, understand the legislative process. What did it mean? And again, simply when you say, how do you break down the intimidation factor? The first thing is just to introduce yourself. Take your hand out, shake your hand. Hey, my name is Ruthy. I live in Cobb County. I'm your constituent. Pleasure to meet you.
Mm-hmm.
Just start off as a simple welcome, just be warm. And then as you have your issues, you then bring them up with your elected official.
And it reminds me of one of my very first interactions with an elected official. I froze up, Ruthy. Now this was a long time ago, but I had in my mind playing on record kind of what I was going to say, and I completely froze up. It never even got back to the point to really talk about what it was that I wanted to. But it was certainly a kind of a trial by fire type scenario where I said, you know what, I'm not going to make that mistake again. To your point, kind of listen to the people that were around me to help navigate through those spaces. And so, it's really cool to hear you mention, groups like the Urban League that really helped to kind of facilitate this bringing down the barriers kind of slowly for folks that were like me or like you, that really wanted to be involved in the process, but were intimidated or just really didn't know how. And so you take Ruthy as this person that wanted to get engaged. Ruthy goes down to the Capitol. She's now plugged in. She goes to the Urban League. She's involved in the Urban League, and now she's leading one of the great auxiliaries of the Urban League in the Guild. Ruthy, as a woman and woman of color in a season like this, what does that mean to you? And then, regarding kind of, the energy around things that are happening in the space, what are some of the things that you want to try to pull people into the Guild to be a part of? Now, I know those are two very big questions, but certainly tackle the first one.
Sure. So to hit the first point, as a woman of color, leading an auxiliary organization, what I found in the past couple of years is what you do matters, right? We work really hard in front of folks and behind the scenes, as you know, but you never know when people are watching you. You're just moving, right? You're just moving like 100 miles an hour. You're moving from one meeting to another, one Zoom to another, one event to another. and so forth, emails and all of that that comes with it.
Mhm.
But what came out of this previous election cycle is that when the wins started to come in, I started getting messages from folks that were thanking me. And I felt like, well, I'm just one person, just
Mhm.
doing my very small part, is what I believed. But the work that we do is greater. And so I'm looking at myself now when I think about the feedback that I've received and knowing that people are watching or paying attention.
Mhm.
I'm potentially an example for a young woman, right? And so I understand that my time and my space as a leader, I'll have to move on. So I'm not that
Mhm.
person that thinks I've got to stay in place like this whole dictator type of attitude. I completely understand that there's a time and a place for everything.
Yeah.
And it's important for succession planning. But it's also important to be an example because our friends' children are watching us. They're also on social media, they pay attention, and I had gotten a lot of messages from folks that I had no idea were paying attention, even cared
Yeah.
about what I was doing. Because all I'm thinking is, I need to post this, I need to put this out there, I need to be at this place and that place. And one young woman in particular who was out of state that we're connected with socially shared with me, and it was such an emotional moment that she said her daughter looked up to me, and I had never even met her daughter.
Mm.
And I'm trying to not
Sweet.
have an emotional moment now, but
You can get emotional, Ruth. We friends. It's all good. That's strong, though.
it
That's
was,
that's
it
nice.
was. It really, really touched me during the election when she told me and just kind of went into depth about how her daughter had been paying attention to me, watching what I was doing, what I was posting, and where I was. Again, this is a woman and a daughter that I'd never met before, but
Yeah.
we've connected socially, virtually. And she shared all these things with me and then proceeded to tell me that I had inspired her daughter to become civically engaged. And I was like, what? I was like, here's my number, here's my information. If she has any questions, please, I'm completely
It's
open, as
beautiful.
you all know, that she can reach out to me anytime if she has any questions or concerns. And so all of us in this space and the things that we're doing, we just have to remember and consider that we are an example, not necessarily a role model, because that's a high place to put folks, but
Mhm.
just understand that you are being watched. And it's important, especially for younger people and the younger generation, to know that there is a space for you,
Yeah.
right? There's room for you at the table. We're past this point where we're breaking through the glass ceiling. We are the ceiling. So we don't have to break it anymore. We just have to make room and space for ourselves. And what's super important now is that we lend a hand back. Like, I can't think and hold this place and say, okay, yeah, I'm a woman and I'm a leader, but I want more women and more leaders to come after me. That's what my legacy should look like. That other
Mhm.
young people or other folks saw what I was doing and said, "Oh man, I can do this too," or "I want to do this."
Yeah.
And while I have my good right in mind, I want to be able to advise and mentor and bring as many people on as I can.
Yeah.
So um, that's to answer that question. Now, give me the second part
Yeah.
again, please.
No, so the second part was more about, as a leader in this space, in the practical execution of kind of your vision through the Urban League Guild, how does that play into this role of keeping people civically engaged? And you don't have to go through the strategic plan in this short period of time that we're with, but in the ways that you would like to pivot post, the election and all the energy, what does that mean for people that you want to bring into the table, or bring to the table that live in the Metro Atlanta area for the work that you do? And it may be good to provide some context around, the guild itself. We've had Daryl George, who's a national president of the Urban League Guild. Shout out to D. George. And we also had Mike Toon, who was the president of, or is the president of the Urban League Young Professionals. And so now we have you as
Yeah.
well as a part of the series. And so, any context that you want to provide regarding that, and pulling people in for the vision that you see within the next few months.
Awesome. Well, I definitely want to give a shout out to to Daryl George for sure, because he was definitely the influence to bring me over to the guild. Again, as you know, we all started as young professionals, and as we began to transition age-wise or professionally, moving from young professional to
Yeah.
the guild, he was one
And
of the
he,
first.
and
Mhm.
he's had such a strong leadership vision around that. And so, folks, if you haven't seen that interview, be sure to go to gregclay.com /purpose-driven pivot and check out Daryl George's interview regarding that topic. It was a really, really good conversation about his vision related to that. And now Ruthy, as a president, has her vision too, and what she wants to do to continue on that path. Yeah.
Correct, correct. And also wanted to give a shout out to Mike Toon because, like I said, he and I served together as young professionals. And so I don't know if we ever thought coming into 2020, 2021, that we would be serving both as leaders of our respective auxiliaries. And he's been doing some phenomenal work as well with the young professionals and a dear close friend of mine. We chat regularly as leaders, and that's important too in this space. So that's something I wanted to share as well. When you are a leader, a lot of times you are alone. That's just you are, but you're not really alone, right? And so in those dark moments when you have to make certain decisions, you feel like you're in a silo. But when you have relationships with other leaders within the civic space in the Metro Atlanta area, it actually helps to make that journey not so lonely because you can bounce out ideas with one another and kind of share the things that you go through that others may not necessarily understand. So I absolutely treasure my relationship with not only Daryl, but also with Mike Toon. As it relates to the Urban League of Greater Atlanta Guild, when we talk about, how do we keep folks engaged and excited about moving forward with this process, one of the things that we share too in our conversation about being engaged is, consider running for office. That is a viable option that, again, many people it seems like it's out of reach.
Mhm.
And, again, you can speak to that, Greg, because you've done
Mhm.
it. It is absolutely possible. It is doable. And sometimes it takes a number of times to get to the finish line. But if you persevere and push, it can actually happen for you. We need to see more diverse faces in the space. And so
Mhm.
while the process may seem intimidating, there are a lot of training. There are a lot of, again, great organizations like, Young Democrats of Atlanta, um, or if you're a Republican as well, you can,
Yeah.
I want to be remiss if I didn't mention that the Urban League of Greater Atlanta, we are a nonpartisan organization. And so we just support just civic activity and civic engagement. So whatever you do, just make sure you vote and you stay active. But, join certain organizations or training grounds that, again, the city is very rich with training opportunities that will support you. One of our dear mutual friends, Adrienne White, I believe, who's now I think she's like the chair of training. I don't want to get it all the way wrong, but she does hold a
Adrian
pretty,
is in some big leadership role doing some
yes,
big things. She is, man.
yeah,
She's an awesome asset
she
to
is. She is.
Georgia and
And
to the Atlanta area. Mhm.
we lean to her often and call her many times for our Urban League events. But I believe
Mhm.
she's in a space where she's helping to recruit potential folks and people who are interested in running for office.
Mhm.
So she would be someone, and she's always putting the call out there. So if you know anybody who's even a little bit interested, but doesn't know what to do or how to get started or what does that look like, there are training grounds available and we have connects and we can get you connected. But also to, again, just thinking about what we can do to serve each other as we move into 2021. We're still in this COVID environment. And so
Yes.
we have to think about safety first. And so for me, the utmost under my responsibility for our members and our volunteers is I don't want to put anybody in harm's way when we're planning events. And so since we just recently heard that the numbers may be spiking up, we're talking about vaccinations and
Yeah.
when is that going to come down to the regular public, as opposed to first responders and so forth. So my number one task right now is making sure that people are safe. And so when we talk about pivoting, of course, many of our events have gone over to virtual, like what you and I are doing via Zoom, calls and meetings and so forth. We want to keep folks engaged. And so what that means for me as a leader, I want to make sure that my folks are okay. So when we get on a call, let's do a check. How are you? What's your mental health state? How do you
Mm.
feel today? Are you all right? There are folks that have been in our homes for months at a time and really have not had a whole lot of contact. Some of us have been blessed and have been able to be around family and friends, but some have not even really been able to see their parents or close family for several months at a time.
Yeah.
And so we've got to touch on the self-care aspect of our membership and our volunteers and make sure that they're in a good space because I can't ask you to help others if you're not good yourself.
Yeah.
right? And that's
Yeah.
you and I, Greg, right? We have to be good as leaders also. So while we're preaching it, we have to practice it.
Yeah, yeah, and telling the total truth around that, there just hasn't been a manual to help get leaders like you through this process. And so, I think that network of being able to pick up the phone and bounce ideas off of folks with the resources and the things that we have available and the tools through this virtual space, I think that's really, really important because what I've found that there's no one way to do things nowadays, even when you get together, because sometimes you have to in a social distancing type scenario environment, even those guidelines, it's really tough. And I think this new norm around how we connect and how we serve people, the door is still wide open on it because the narrative changes, seems like every month. When we talk about the numbers and CNN or whatever news outlet that you're watching, the news stories are a bit different than they were, second quarter, third quarter of 2020. Nowadays, it's like it doesn't get a whole lot of attention, but it should be getting more attention than anything else, because it's impacting so many people. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And so, I mean, for that, Ruthy, when you think about the future in this virtual space, keeping folks politically and civically engaged, do you think that more, municipalities or more, places where policy is being created, even as the Georgia legislative session kicks off, when we talk about the Capitol and people just physically going down to the lobby, I'll give you an example. I had to go speak at like the Fulton County school board meeting, and there wasn't an opportunity to do anything virtually. Like you literally had to go down to the physical building, mask up, and I was just thinking how ridiculous it's in a time like this. You know, uh, what's your message to leaders that might be in that space? And I'm not throwing them under the bus. I'm just recognizing, hey, how can you get citizen involvement or public engagement if you're not considering those types of things? Do you have any opinions about, what cities or what elected officials should be leaning more into about this experience and what you've just seen in the space?
So for example, City of South Fulton, where I'm currently employed, we are still 100% virtual in terms of constituent events in terms of meetings. So like our city council meetings that are open to the public, that is still being held virtually. So for the most part, what would have been a large public in-person event is still being held virtually.
Mhm.
And we just have to make that as easy as possible. And what I mean by that, offering it on all platforms, whether, if you're on Instagram or Facebook. YouTube is also very popular. People don't get cut off there.
Mhm.
Facebook seems, again, very popular for most lay people to
Mhm.
access the meeting. So that has been a great pivot for us. I don't think we've necessarily lost participantship due to moving virtually. As a matter of fact, because it has allowed the flexibility for people to kind of hop on and in and out whenever they could, as opposed to having to drive to go somewhere
You've seen
and be
stuff
on
increase.
time. Right. So there
Mhm.
has been an increase in participation and people, being active and engaged in what's going on municipally. And so I think we still have to consider those options. Um, Again, starting off in the first 2 quarters of 2021, this is where we're going to be, and
Mhm.
it could last through the end of this year. We just have to
Sure.
prepare ourselves for that. Last year, we had no idea, right? So last March, it was, oh, maybe we'll be done by Memorial Weekend and we're going to turn up and have a good time by the holiday.
Mhm.
And that very quickly, it was like, no,
Let's do it.
all those plans got thrown out the window. We're still in quarantine. We're still having to be safe. And so now we're here in 2021. This is now our new normal.
Mhm.
And so we've got to find a way to help our folks to embrace technology.
Mhm.
Now, what will be the challenge is, of course, for our senior membership and population, right? So that's what we have to consider. Again, with us not being able to be around our more mature constituents and family members, it's hard. They may
And it
be
really getting impacted the most by
right.
this. It's Yeah, well, go ahead. It's just such a tough thing to talk through, you know?
It is. It is. You hit that right on the nail because that was the first population, at least in our metro area, that was hit initially, like right in the nursing homes and the senior living area. That's where we got hit the hardest when the COVID pandemic occurred. And so now, when we're having to social distance away from these folks and not be able to see them, and now we're just seeing them, sometimes just. I remember when this first started, I was just talking to my parents in the driveway of their home, like I was too afraid to go in their house.
Yeah.
That was a weird transaction. I'm standing outside my car and they have a gate to the driveway and I'm like, hey y'all, how's it going? Hardly hugging them, kind of touching each
Yeah.
other by the elbow.
Yep.
It's just completely changed even how we deal as human beings. We are super social people. We like to hug and kiss. I come from a West Indian family, so we are huggers and we do kiss, and not to be able to do that and feel that from your close friends and loved ones. Again, it's like that check-in. You have to check in with your close family and friends, whether that's a text message or a phone call.
Yeah.
How are you? How's it going? Just let you know I'm thinking about you. I'm with you. But to go answer to your question about municipal spaces, we just again have to be very careful and safe. Now, I understand that there are some city halls that are open, from my understanding, and they have employed certain ways for people to come in, and they're sanitized and temperature checks and all that. Again, I mean, it's really up to the individual, right? And how much they want to interact as well too.
Yeah.
So we just have to give them electronic options to do business with the city, as well as participate with the city. So if you weren't there before, COVID made you realize very quickly that if certain processes and procedures government wise were not electronic, that you had to pivot quickly before the year was over to make those options available so that you can continue to have business with continuity and no interruption or lack of interruption.
Very good, very good. The notion around having as many options available to the public for that engagement cycle to continue, I think that's going to be, because there's so many different options out there, I think it's going to be a good space for business. I think the opportunity for creativity and innovation for elected officials, and how, I've seen so many different ways, even for some of the folks that I've worked professionally with, we're trying to figure it out, what platform, what tools, what's the runway for engagement and communication. There's just so many different things to consider. And there just hasn't been a silver bullet around any of those things. I remember talking to, we were doing something related to voting, and I was talking to one of our younger members of the community. He was like, Mr. Clay, it's not going to work unless we got to start promoting no longer than 48 hours. I said, no longer than 48 hours? It's like, nah. He said, if you put it out, any longer than 48 hours, it's just not going to work. He said, 24 hours, I said, man, I just don't know. I don't know if that holds true, right? And I don't know if I necessarily believe, but he was my professional advice at that particular time. I'm trying to connect with collegiate students around a particular topic. I said, man, this is really interesting around the cadence and the rhythm of how folks even expect to receive information now, because we've gone so much of our life not doing it this way, and now everything is in that space. Everything is in that space.
Yeah, I find that interesting that you say that, because recently I had an event for the Guild, and the person I was working for gave me the same remark, like, oh, we didn't need a week or two. And I was like, what? I felt like I was telling my age, but at the same time, we were peers. This person's actually a little bit older than I. And I thought it was interesting that he was like, oh, you don't need 24 hours or 48 hours to post this, and then, folks will come. I'm like, but the people I know need at least a week. We're pretty busy. We got to check our calendars. I know I'm one. I'm always having to check my calendar to make sure I'm available. So it's interesting that you say that. Again, dealing with different generations and how we communicate with each other and how we're moving and pivoting through this COVID environment, and now hearing that people don't really need that much time, just a day notice to attend an event. I'm like, are we really like just at home sitting, not doing anything? It might be for some folks, but other people still need some lead time for certain things. So yeah, we're all learning together, Greg.
Indeed. I wanted to ask you something particularly related to youth, and now with Madam Vice President soon to take office closer towards the end of this month. For youth engagement, youth involvement, something I know that you're very passionate about. With the in thinking about seasons where it's easy, very well, not easy because it's never easy to talk about politics with young folks. Necessary, I think it's getting better, but I remember when President Obama was in office, Mayor Reed was in office, and I was going in and out of classrooms talking about politics. It was a lot easier to talk through politics as a Black man because of the president, the mayor, and myself, and talking in this landscape around, just folks' antennas being up because they saw themselves in it. What comes to mind for you when you think about the opportunities for Madam Vice President, the lane of leadership that you're in, and this opportunity to connect with, even more young ladies of color in the space, or Black women in the space, behind this energy, this newer energy? What comes to mind when we talk through that?
Well, what comes to mind for me is I see myself in our future Madam Vice President because I am also a first generation American, right? My parents are from Haiti and came here a little over 40 years ago and started their life and had to learn the language, learn the lay of the land, and have achieved their American dream so many times over
Yes.
and made lots of sacrifices for my brother and I. And so the first thing that comes to mind for me, even just the pride, because I absolutely see all of myself in Madam Kamala Harris. I mean, she is me, I am her, right? And so that's what I would lead with when I talk to young people, that I am a first generation American. Probably most of the young people I'm speaking to are as well, because now our country is a complete melting pot. So you don't
Yes.
know who you're talking to, right? For the most part, there are those that are Native Americans or have come from other places, but many of us are first generation or just melting from some place. And so when I speak to that vein, that's what I would tell them, that hey, you see yourself in our future vice president, and if you work hard, it does require hard work. It requires having determination, perseverance, pushing through, but also having a heart of service. Like, you can't do this work and achieve this level if you don't care about people or empathize in some way or want to see some change and think that you can make a change, right? So there's some level of confidence that comes along with that, where you have to, again, own your citizenship and say, I'm going to make a difference, however small it may be. Again, if it's just writing out a postcard, reaching out to a constituent, encouraging them to vote, or deciding that you want to help a person that's running for office that you truly believe in and that you want to see them through the election process, or whether that means just going on a trip to visit the Capitol or going to DC and visiting the White House. So
Mhm.
when we see our future vice president, I mean, I absolutely see myself in her, and that's how I would lead in any conversation with a young person. And so when they would come back with rejection, oh, my vote doesn't count, or it doesn't matter. Yes, it absolutely does. Because if you think about, had Kamala Harris's parents stayed where they were in their respective countries and not, emigrate to the US and build their family here,
Sure.
where would Miss Harris be today?
Mhm.
We don't know her future, right? And so to be able to kind of respect the immigrant process of building the country or helping build the country is really a remarkable feat, because we find ourselves now, even when we talk about the census and why the census was so important in 2010,
Yeah.
we needed all those numbers to count. And so what kept me up at night last year was the fact that COVID happened,
Yeah.
was the fact that we had a major presidential election. And so
Yeah.
we lost a lot of lives. And so I wonder, and I ask myself, what will our census numbers look like 10 years from now? Because that was such a big push for us, even for the Urban League. We were a major partner in encouraging and making sure that people were counted, all households. We had, unfortunately, a presidency that was not supportive of our immigrant brothers and sisters, and it created a fear around that process. And so I think to myself, you think about the fear that came with filling out and completing the census, submitting that, then on top of our lives being upended by COVID, people losing their jobs, the uncertainty behind that, those are the kind of things that kept me up at night. And so when people say, the numbers don't count, or we don't, yeah, we do count. That's the reason why, when you think about why are they suppressing votes? Why were there kind of things in place that, kind of prevented the census to be counted? Remember, there was an issue, I think, back in September, October, where we were supposed to extend the time frame
Yes.
for the census to be counted, and that went out the door.
Mhm.
It's because it was important. This thing only happens only every 10 years.
And it's going to be really interesting, Ruthie, the conversations that are going to crank up, at the top of the summer and go through, redistricting, going through, who knows what's going to happen in the allocation of congressional seats. It's such an important process. And I was proud to see that the Urban League was kind of in lockstep locally with that conversation, because so many times, because it happens every 10 years, folks kind of tune out of the process. And I don't think that it was one where a lot of people, while folks were familiar with it and knew about it, even some of my peers, a lot of people were kind of scratching their head on how this made sense out of everything that was going on. And so the money that states receive, the community impact regarding the numbers, the diversity, the true pictures of diversity in some neighborhoods and communities when it comes to the need, and not just the normal kind of narrative around the need generally in our communities, but the need post-COVID. It's going to really, really have an interesting impact. And I think we really got to brace ourselves for what those things look like for the duration of this year. And so I think after folks kind of take a break, to your point, that's got to be kind of top 5 on the list of things that we have to look out for in all neighborhoods and communities.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Ruthie, as we kind of come to a close, I've got to, talk about all these things that you do. How does Ruthie take a break from, everything that's going on around her? For folks that are plugged in, for folks that say, "Woo, I feel Ruthie is saying, let's take a break." What are some of your tips or advice around how people can unplug? In addition to that, what are some of the things that continue to inspire you around kind of taking a break in that balance as well, that people can learn from? And you can talk about as many or as few things as you want to.
Sure. So one of the things I took up just before COVID was meditation.
Mhm.
As a believer, you kind of sometimes don't understand what is involved, or you kind of think, oh, that's not really part of it, I should just pray. And prayer is absolutely going to always be my forefront. So I'm going to always get up and start with an attitude of gratitude and prayer. That's how I always start my day. Just, hey, if I can get up, I'm still breathing, and I can open my eyes and get out of bed.
Yes.
Just the prayer is thank you, God. That's the prayer. It doesn't have to be complicated. We're not using any SAT words. He doesn't need all that. It's just thank you, Lord, I got up today, because I know
Yes.
so many other people
Yes.
did not have that chance, right? So I start with an attitude of gratitude. Then I was introduced to the Calm app. It's a free app, Calm, CALM, and they offer a number of breathing exercises, because there was a point where I had some anxious moments
Yeah.
or stressful moments, even, again, when we started to move into COVID, not understanding what work was going to look like, how we're going to lead through the Urban League, keeping people safe, like all of those things were running through my mind. And, it creates a cause of anxiety, a level of anxiety as a leader. And so I definitely had to employ breathing exercises, and that helped me a
Yeah.
lot, the deep
Yeah.
breathing.
Mhm.
And with the Calm app, it allows you to set the time. So you can do 1 minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or so forth.
Mhm.
And you know me well, I picked up running right after I had my car accident 10 years ago. This year it'll be 11 years. And so exercise has been an absolute outlet for me, absolute outlet. For those of you that don't know, I do have high blood pressure, but it's maintained through exercise. And I've been able to get off and on medication because of that. And so exercising is important. And again, that doesn't have to be complicated. Just find the thing that you like to do. Start 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and the next thing you know, you're going to be out there for an hour. And so during COVID, what helped me and kept my sanity, because we were working remotely, I was able to work around my schedule and walk or run about 4 to 5 miles every day, literally every single day. It helped to maintain my weight. Watch what you eat because eating also affects your moods and your health. So that's something that as a community we don't talk enough about. We like to indulge. There's nothing wrong with indulging, right? I'm not a person that talks about restrictions, and I'm not a dieter at all.
Mhm, mhm.
I just know that I love my ice cream. If you know me well. I love, 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 and I'm not compromising my ice cream, right?
What's your favorite flavor ice cream?
So I like Bailey's Irish cream.
Okay.
Yes,
That's
it's
fancy.
awesome. Just a little bit.
Mine is just old school butter pecan. It's butter pecan.
That's good too. That's good too. But so instead of eating the whole pint like I did when I was younger and my metabolism was good, I'm eating a couple of, just a couple of scoops and then I put it back.
Yeah.
Again, another part of self-care is checking in, literally checking in with your friends and family. A quick text message, leaving a phone call or a message for someone, making sure that you're plugged in and connected. Because again, the time that we're in now, it's not natural, it's not normal, it's become our new normal, but it's not necessarily normal for us. And I've even had recently a senior that reaching out to me saying that she wanted to see me and wanted to hang out with me. And I'm like torn by that request. I'm like, oh my God, I want to see you and spend time with you too. And I miss you dearly, but I don't want to expose you. I don't want to, compromise your health or mine. And so we're trying to figure out ways of how do we maintain our social activities, but in a safe way. And so those are some of the few things that I do to help kind of stay grounded and kind of bring back my own self care. And I'm open to what you've got. If you can share with
Yeah,
me, I'd
what a
love to
health.
hear it.
I mean, I want to jump in at the health scenario. Living in a city and seeing more parts of the city and running routes and tracking and running. Like I've taken a different type of dive on my health, and it feels good. Blood pressure wise.
Yeah.
Everything that goes into clean blood work. All of that stuff has really transformed. And I found this solace in it, Ruthy, because uh, I, like many other folks, are just trying to navigate through what the norm was. And I'm so used to this certain notion of stability because you've got to plan and inspire and advocate people around that stability. And when everything's kind of shifting, now the conversation is like, hey, you just got to be more flexible. For us that say, this launching pad for the advice that we give, or this launching pad for the solutions that we give, that kind of doesn't exist. And it's more of an intangible thing rather than this tangible thing, especially when leaning on your faith. We've got to still be able to tell the folks that love us and follow us and are inspired by something. And so I found some solace in that healthier aspect of just being prepared, more nimble around things. Shani, my wife, shout out to Shani, who's a good friend of yours as well, has helped me with talking through meditation. She's doing a lot more than I am, but I do still make some time to make sure I'm plugged in. Audible has become my best friend, and so I'm reading or listening to more books nowadays, and staying busy, not busy, but productive. Staying productive. I'm plugged in and leading a lot more than I typically have been, but that flexibility and that balance around things has provided for more creativity and innovation and being successful in those spaces. And so the health thing is certainly number one, and that mental healthness. It's kind of almost 1A and 1B because I'm, by the grace of God, I've seen that health stay with me and just be balanced. And recently celebrating a birthday yesterday as well
Happy
as you.
birthday.
We're both Capricorns, y'all. The Capricorn
Yes.
strength. The things around that and being grateful for those things in this season. I'm just still so inspired by stories like yours and other things that kind of help us make it through. So this is even therapeutic. This series around talking through challenges and opportunities, and just the feedback that I've received from people that have tuned in. This is a part of that therapy too. Mhm.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, this is therapy, even just being able to converse with you like this,
Mhm.
right?
And
I don't know
your
when's the last time
environment,
I saw you.
your environment is so relaxing. I mean, you're like what that setup that you have going on, like keep that.
Thank you. This
That-
is my living room. I'm in my living room, so welcome to my home.
yeah, the tones, like it's such a calming kind of thing you got going
Thank
on versus my,
you.
my God bless the gathering spot. Shout out to the gathering spot.
Shout
It's
out to the gathering spot for
my
sure.
headquarters. But Ruthy, any final thoughts around things that as we come to a close, around the balance, around pivots, around things that you just maybe didn't cover that you want people to keep at the forefront around this year or just change? I want to give you that opportunity before we close out.
Sure. Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you for this platform. I know this is a point of personal privilege, but just want to say thank you for your friendship, your tutelage, because I've learned so much from you throughout the years and have been inspired by you. And then you've introduced me to my sister, Shawnee, your wife. And so you all have, again, been my extended family and have made my time and journey here in Atlanta just an exceptional experience. So I just want to extend that to you and just publicly share with you how much I appreciate you and love you, and keep doing what you're doing, because again, people are watching. I'm watching, the younger folks are watching. You are an example. Just stay the path, let God guide you, let him to continue to lead you in what you're doing, and the doors will open up for you abundantly. I believe that 100%. In closing, just wanted to share with everyone again just the importance of self-care. Like I said, we're coming into year of this new normal. So make sure that you do take time for yourself. It's critically important that we find ways to be creative. Again, in this space like this, where we're meeting socially, whether it's by phone call or by Zoom, find ways to connect. Don't completely isolate yourself. While that might be the easy route, and I'm speaking to myself because at times I found that when I'm challenged, I tend to kind of bring myself in and not share, or not realize that there are other people that are going through the same thing. It's not unique, right? It's just like heartbreak. We all have been heartbroken. So what we're going through is not unique, but when it happens to you, you feel like you're by yourself and you're alone. And we have to remind ourselves that we are not alone in how we feel. So
Yeah.
please do reach out to someone or even seek therapy.
Mhm.
Again, that's something that we didn't get to touch on, but we do with the Urban League. We've had some webinars in the past just touching on that self-care piece. It sometimes seems to be taboo when we talk about reaching out and having a therapist, but sometimes speaking to a non-biased party, a non-biased person. If you're a believer, you can find someone that's Christian based or not, but find someone that's aligned with where you want to be and that is specific in your needs, and set up therapy sessions. Something that most of us don't realize, that is a part of your insurance plan, that it may not be so out of reach, right? Like it just may be a matter of a simple copay
Yeah.
to reduce the cost, but reach out to your HR, find out if that is a service that is included in your health plan, and reach out and seek a therapy. Because I know for me personally, it's been extremely helpful in my journey. Again, just want to advise everyone to keep the faith. Um, just want to encourage you all to not lose the space that we're in right now. We've got this voter fatigue, and I know we touched on it before. Take the break, but hit the ground running. Reach out to your elected officials, or consider running for office. We're going to have some seats that are going to flip soon, that's going to be available and open up with this new administration coming in. And so consider giving back to your community in that way. You would be surprised how much impact you have as maybe a school board member. You don't necessarily have to have kids in the school system to participate. Of course, it's helpful, but if you are a vested member of the community, again, we'll reiterate this: own your citizenship, right? This is where you live, this is your community. You own this, and only you can make it better. We can't get mad when we see a liquor store that opens up, but we never attended the town hall meetings when we saw the signs on the road on the way home to work, right? Though they put those signs up publicly, but we look away and we say we're too busy, we're not going to attend. But folks are making decisions on your behalf, and you could have been part of that process. That's the beauty of our democracy. That's the beauty of being in the United States of America, is that you actually really do have a voice, and it has power, and you can use it. If there are any young people that are listening and watching, this space is for you. We're ready to step aside and let you have it. We're not going to lead forever. And so we want to empower you. I know that the virtual schooling, it might be challenging and difficult for you, but just keep pushing through. Hopefully one day we can prayerfully return to school in person. But in the meantime, just work with the flexibility of your teachers, work with your parents too. It's frustrating for mom and dad, believe it or not. It's not easy for them to be at home with you while they have to work. And so everybody, again, is making concessions in this space. And we want to encourage young people to kind of hold fast, keep up with your studies so that you can be a viable workforce, because I'm not going to work forever. I'm going to sit down at some point. I plan on it. So we need you to come back behind us and be strong in the workforce, be fully educated, fully prepared to take on the generations to come. So I'll stop there because we probably
That's
could keep
beautiful.
going.
Absolutely beautiful. Ruthy, thank you so much for joining this platform today on Purpose Driven Pivot. You are an exemplary leader in what it is that you've been able to do, not just professionally, but also civically. And as a great friend, just know that I'm extremely, extremely proud of you and the example that you set and inspired by the things that you're going to be leaning in the future on. This is an opportunity for leadership like yours to really, really thrive. And we know that we stand on the shoulders of so many folks and we're reminded about those things through conversations like these in order to take our break and continue to get to work. So thank you for being just exactly who you are. Thank you for being an extended member of my family. And I know that the folks that are watching and tuned in live right now, and will see this in the future, they're grateful for the advice that you gave today. And so again, folks, this has been an episode of Purpose Driven Pivot. I'm your host, Greg Clay. You can find more information about this series and other interviews at gregclay.com/purpose driven pivot. Ruthy, where can they find more information about you, whether it be your social media tag or a social media handle or even the Guild?
Sure. So they can find me at LIL_RUTHYP. So that's Lil Ruthy. Also, more importantly, the Urban League of Greater Atlanta Guild. So that would be on all social media handles at ULGA_GUILD. That's again the auxiliary of the Urban League of Greater Atlanta. So if you have a heart of service and you want to be around like-minded people, we are philanthropists, we give back, we serve, and we support our affiliate. And so I do want to share, I did not want to miss this, we're celebrating our centennial year. So the Atlanta Urban League of Greater Atlanta is celebrating 100 years. So we have been in service 100 years this year. The National Urban League, it will be celebrating their 110th year of service nationally across the country. And so keep us in mind if you're looking for an organization in which you want to give back and share. Our services have not stopped. We've actually had to pivot as well. So the home buyer training sessions that we do, again, are now virtual. Our entrepreneurship series, all virtual. We have our Project Ready that we work along with YP in our affiliate, where we support high school students through graduation, and then whether they decide to get their GED or diploma. And then we continue to support them either if they want to go to path of college, entrepreneurship, or trade school. The point is you've got to do something when you finish. So we encourage that, and we'll mentor you through that process. We also have our returning citizens program. So those that have been incarcerated, we have partnered with a number of organizations, including Tyler Perry Studios, Home Depot, State Farm. A number of organizations throughout Metro Atlanta has partnered with us to help with training and direct employment. And so if you know anybody in that space, send them over to www.ulgatl.org for additional information.
That's beautiful, Ruthy. Thank you so much for that information and for the resources. And thank you again for being exactly who you are. Folks, thank y'all so much for joining us. And we will see y'all soon. Ruthy, have a great rest of your evening and your week. And I will talk to you soon as well. We'll see y'all later.
Likewise. Tell Sean I said hi.
I certainly will. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right.